This is Oscar. I first met him back in 2012. Back then, there was a lot of worry about the declining number of kids riding their bikes to school, but Oscar and his gang of friends were bucking that trend, riding their bikes to school every day of the year, even through a cold Canadian winter. I wrote about Oscar and his gang back then on my cycling blog, and I got more attention than almost anything I had ever written. Everybody, it seemed, thought that kids riding their bikes to school was a good idea. But since then, the problem has only gotten worse. And so I set out to figure out why fewer and fewer kids seem to be riding bikes to school today and what it's doing to their childhoods. I visited my old high school, I dove into the research, I found some amazing programs that are getting more kids on bikes, and I met some really inspiring kids who are making a difference. And I tracked down Oscar, and I found out that his story may hold one of the keys to improving childhood mobility for everybody. Hey everybody, I'm Tom. This is Shifter, a channel about urban cycling, bike commuting, and the ways we get around our cities. A big thank you for members who help keep this channel going. I appreciate all of you. And as a show of bonus thanks this month, we have a contest. We're giving away one of these. This is a brand new bag, a pannier from our friends at Two Wheel Gear. Details are in the description down below. This is a chart documenting the declining rates of children riding their bikes to school. Here's where things were at back when I met Oscar. If you go backward from here, you can see why there was concern at the time. Back in 1969, 48% of kids in the US walked or biked to school. Those numbers had basically reversed. Now, you may be surprised to hear that some guy writing a blog for a mid-sized newspaper in the mid-2000s might have changed the whole trend, but no, it did not. But do you know how bad it's gotten since then? By 2017, a different report found that only 9.6% were walking to school and a meager 1.1% were riding a bike. Here in Canada, the numbers have always been slightly better, but still pretty awful. According to the Canadian government, in 2017, 74% of kids arrived by motorized transport. That could be a car or bus. 22% walked and only 4% were riding a bike. You want a comparison to really highlight this decline? Are you sure you want to see this? In the Netherlands and Denmark, between 75 and 80% of kids ride their bikes to school, according to Mobicon. Now, you've probably heard this before, but maybe you haven't thought that deeply about what this means for kids. There is a mountain of academic research about the negative consequences this has on childhood. I mean, taken individually, these reports can be discouraging, but taken as a whole, it's hard not to feel like this is a crisis. I mean, just look at the list of problems facing kids today and how they relate to active mobility. Lack of physical activity, yep. Negative impacts on mental health because of a lack of physical activity, yep. Worse emotional regulation, yep. Increasing rates of anxiety, yep. Less confidence, yep. Worse risk assessment, yep. Loss of connection to community, yep. Fewer friends in the neighborhood leading to a lack of social connections, also yep. And the worst part might be that it seems like we're setting up future generations to face these same problems as well. So it's a nice Sunday morning and I've traveled across the city today because I'm on a mission. I'm going to recreate the route that I rode my bike to school when I was a kid. I wasn't always the bike nerd you see before you. There was a time when I was just a regular nerd, but I did occasionally ride my bike to school, and I remember being an anomaly even back then. One time I pulled my bike into the bike racks and a group of kids piled out of a car and shouted, "Nice car, loser." True story. I'm doing this because I want to be reminded of the barriers that kids face in walking and riding to school, because the research says that one of the biggest barriers is the way that our neighborhoods and communities have developed, especially over the last 75 years or so. So I rode on these multi-use pathways a lot when I was a kid, and I'm pretty grateful for them because a lot of neighborhoods don't even have these. But even back then, I recognized how inefficient they were and sometimes dangerous because of gaps in the network and disconnections and putting you out onto a busy street that you'd have to get off and cross on foot if you were lucky. And it's infrastructure like this that is absolutely part of the problem. The research finds that poor planning and poor infrastructure combines with these cultural forces that create almost this self-reinforcing cycle that is dooming childhood active mobility. This suburb was built in the 1970s before things got really bad, but you can already see some of the trends that are emerging here, such as schools being clustered in a group on the outskirts of a community, accessible only or primarily by automobile, which makes the distances really big for kids to get there and makes them more dangerous to access in any way except a car. So that's my high school over there, but I think I had forgotten how big this road is that I had to cross to get there. It's 6 lanes this way, 4 lanes that way, just to get to the street. I mean, especially for young kids, how many parents today would let their kids cross a street like this on their own? Now that I'm here, I'm reminded of the practical considerations that make it easier for people to ride their bikes. Parking is one. There's a nice student parking lot for cars over there, but I remember the bike parking here being pretty crappy. If I remember right, it was just around the corner here. Oh look, it's still here. Actually, it's pretty good. They've added to it, and these are weird racks. They look like pretty good racks. Actually, I'm impressed. I'm happy to see this because in a lot of places, bad bike parking, unsafe places, bikes being stolen, that's a huge problem at schools, and it's another barrier we put up in front of kids who want to ride or walk. Of course, there's more than just city design that led to this decline. Some of this can be attributed back to this kid. This is Eaton Patz, and back in 1979, Eaton was a 6-year-old in New York City, and on the morning of May 25th, on his way to the school bus, Eaton disappeared. He was never found. His disappearance became an international story, and it terrified parents everywhere. Eaton's disappearance became the archetypal every parent's nightmare, and it struck deeply all over the place. Soon, those days of kids playing on their own started to wane. Parents pulled their kids in a little bit closer, and terms like stranger danger started to emerge. This applies to the way that kids got to school as well. Fewer and fewer parents were comfortable letting their kids get to school on their own, even if the statistical risk of kidnapping was extremely and maybe even absurdly low then, and it remains so today. But that fear lingers, and there's also the perception that pedestrians are at greater risk today, which is not necessarily the case in most places where pedestrian deaths have been flat for a number of years, but it is in the US where pedestrian deaths are now at a 30-year high. This is what I mean by it being a self-reinforcing cycle. Our neighborhoods make it more difficult to ride and walk. Our parenting has changed to reduce the freedom of kids to get around on their own, which leads to more driving, which leads to kids not knowing how to ride a bike or get around, which leads to more car use, which leads to demand for car-centric neighborhoods. It's to the point now where in many places, the school drop-off in the morning and the afternoon pickup is the most dangerous part of a kid's life. There are so many cars, it's this gauntlet of kids being dropped off out of their automobiles, and it's gotten so dangerous that in some places, schools have banned kids from walking or riding their bike out of fear that they'll get run over by a car. The irony there is crazy, right? And it may feel a little hopeless. These are some huge societal barriers to overcome. But the more I looked into this, the more excited and optimistic I became. Change is already happening.
My journey begins in Afghanistan, where I grew up with a brother and many other male family members around. Growing up, I was never able to go outside and play with my friends and just enjoy my childhood like my brother was. And I never had a bike or other sport equipments like my male family members. So that's why I sort of grew up to be very passionate about breaking these taboos for women.
This is Mohadessa. She recently graduated from this high school, and as part of that, she was in a program offered by a local nonprofit called Youth en Route, which helps kids overcome barriers to getting on bikes. Not only did she learn how to ride a bike, which she had never learned when she was younger, but she learned how to take care of it and maintain it, how to lock it up safely, and maybe most importantly, how to navigate the city to get where she needed to go.
First thing, it's a really fun thing to do. I'm really interested in just going to the gym, staying active, and sort of taking care of myself and my health, and even like being able to go to work or school. It's just so independent.
She's even shared her new skills with other people in her life.
My family is super excited about me riding a bike and being able to get out there and experience the world. And that's why my aunt is interested in me teaching her how to ride a bike. And we've actually got her a bike just like last week. And she's super excited about it, just like I was.
Her story was really valuable to me too, because it showed me that after speaking to her and the founder of Youth en Route, there are some really foundational, fundamental barriers that I hadn't considered before.
What are those kids? They're just lazy. They're not riding their bikes to school. No, that's not the case at all. These kids aren't lazy. They simply lack the skills and the equipment to be able to make this choice. It's a privilege to have a bike and to be able to have the luxury to be able to use it. A school like this, 10% of these kids have never been on a bike before. Less than 25% of kids tell us they own a bike. So how can you learn to ride safely if you don't have that basic equipment?
I talked to Laura on a day when they were giving out refurbished bikes to graduates of the program.
I mean, if your parents don't know how to ride a bike, they're not going to teach you how to ride a bike. So we give them those basic skills, how to balance, how to turn, how to brake and control, what a gear is for, how to change a gear. And then we go to wayfinding. How do you choose a route? How do you choose a route that's safe for you? How to park your bike so it doesn't get stolen, how to advocate for safe routes or bike parking. So really at the end of the day, we give them the option to be able to choose to ride a bike somewhere.
Laura sees 5 barriers to getting kids on bikes. 1 is knowing how to ride a bike. 2 is having access to a bike. 3 is secure places to store and park your bike. 4 is safe routes to ride. And 5 is a community that can support you. Her group is trying to address all of those barriers.
The biggest light bulb moment that we have in our programs is when we take them for a 3 or 4 kilometer bike ride, and we take them to the train station, or we take them to the ice cream store or a McDonald's, and their little minds are just, that was easy, why don't I do this? Because they have no concept.
This isn't the only program designed to help kids get on bikes. When I was in Victoria, British Columbia recently, the local advocacy group called Capital Bikes has a number of programs to support kids.
The challenge is they're nervous to ride on the road. And I think when they're nervous to ride on the road, they're likely not going to get their bike and go to where they want to go. But a bike can also mean freedom and independence. And so if we give them the education and the confidence and the skills to ride on the road or around town or ride to school, it helps get them more interested in cycling, encourage them to cycle more, and promotes active transportation.
So you can see there are some amazing people doing some great things to help overcome these barriers. Key, I think, really for the future is to get these into schools in the great bike countries of the world. Learning how to ride a bike and navigate the city is part of the school curriculum. That would be great. But for now, what if you're the parent of a kid who has a bike and knows how to ride, but you're still not comfortable letting them ride to school? Let's go for a ride on a bike bus. Bike buses exist in cities all over the world, and they're popping up everywhere, and the concept could not be more simple. A couple of parents get together and ride a group of kids to school together. I recently tagged along with this bike bus. A small group met in the morning and then went off on a designated route, and just like a real bus, they picked the kids up on the way. There was a parent in the front and a parent in the back, and that was it. They rode to school.
It seems like it helps them have a better day at school. They're going to learn better, they're going to be healthier, and this is the kind of active lifestyle which is very easy to continue as they get out of school into the rest of their lives. So it's healthy, good for the community, good for the environment, and I think really good educationally.
There are all kinds of things that parents or even teachers can do, and it doesn't take a whole lot to get something going. I've heard from teachers who have launched bike to school programs within their school, and that had a huge impact. One parent can get the community together to identify safe routes to school for kids. Other parent groups have gone to the city and had school streets created to eliminate that gauntlet of cars out front of the school every morning by banning cars at certain times of the day. So there are all kinds of things that can happen, and it doesn't take a huge amount of effort to get it going. And the research shows that, yes, this stuff can make a difference, sometimes a profound one. In the US, the Safe Routes to School program found that programs in 800 schools increased the number of kids riding and walking by 31%. Research shows that kids who use active transportation to get to school have all kinds of benefits. Better risk assessment, increased confidence, lower rates of obesity, lower rates of anxiety and depression. And long-term, kids who walk or ride to school have better connections to their neighborhood. They have better social ties, an increased sense of community, belonging, more frequent peer interactions. There are even cognitive benefits. Kids tend to perform better in school and on tests measuring inhibition, attention, even executive functioning and concentration. And all of these sound great, of course, but they're pretty abstract notions, which got me wondering, what can these benefits look like in the life of one kid? Do you see this guy riding his bike? Yes, you've already met him way back in 2012. This is Oscar, who I introduced at the start of this video. This is Oscar today with his mom, Lori. Now, Lori was a driving force in that bike gang 14 years ago. She's been running walking tours in Calgary for years and has written a couple of local guidebooks for walking and cycling, and she's a huge advocate for active transportation. Couldn't help but wonder if that little bike gang had much of an impact on Oscar's life today.
When I went to university, a small town with, probably 5,000 people. People would drive to and from class. They would drive to the gym to exercise, to drive home. And it was, it's a small town and there are traffic jams in the streets when, in reality, I can be home in a minute on my bike. And I would pass by dozens of people on the road waiting to get past the one set of lights in the town. So I think at that point it became obvious to me, like, wow, I view transport in a different way, and it's actually just a lot more efficient.
Mom Lori says she's even more convinced now that facilitating those bike rides back then was the right thing to do.
I just think active living is the most important thing that we can do in general. I've always been doing active transport for my entire life, walking, biking outdoors. I love the outdoors. I think it's great for physical health, mental health. I think it's great to connect to a city. I think it's great for navigation, independence. There's so many reasons that it's a benefit. And allowing kids their own time without an adult, and there's no adult facilitation in this thing at all. Of course, you train them ahead of time so that they know the rules of the road, they understand, and you have confidence, and you ship them out. And then it's up to them, and they get to make their own decisions. And they, because that's the goal of a parent, is to let the kids become independent.
And looking back, what do the other kids think about it today?
I think most of them are still active. I'm sure many of them own cars and whatnot, but I think they have taken that with them. We still all look back on it very fondly, so at the very least there's that. And I have discussed it with them at certain points, and I think like the impact of it might have also been, and this is just purely anecdotal, but like if you see your kid biking to school in the middle of winter, you have to sort of ask like, why I have no reason not to be doing that either. So I think the impact might have been a bit larger than just what they choose to do later.
So if we take a step back, are there some big civic and cultural forces that are aligned against our kids riding their bikes to school more often? Yeah, absolutely. And we need to get working, creating better infrastructure and a better culture of active transportation if we really want to fix this problem. But in the meantime, in the cities that we live in right now, can we make a difference? Well, standing here outside of the school that Oscar rode his bike to hundreds of times, if you were to ask him, I think he'd say, yes, we can. Thanks for watching. See you next time.